Business Alliance leads online e-channel. I'm Dom DeMeo, CEO of the Alliance. And as the leader of the Alliance, the team and I believe you're in for another powerful presentation this morning. First, I'd like to inform the audience we're recording the event, just so everyone knows, in case you have somebody in the background that you don't want to be seen. I want to be cognizant of that. And second, I'd like to thank Senate President Galvano for visiting with us this morning.
Absolutely.
And our Government Affairs Committee as well for helping us put it on. Susan Goldstein, who's our chair, and the group that she has with her that help guide the Alliance through what we do on the government affairs side. As you came in this morning, you saw our Alliance sponsors, presidential sponsors, executive sponsor, level sponsors, and all of our sponsors that were scrolling on the screen. And thank you to our sponsors for what they do every year, year after year. We wouldn't be able to put our presentations on, especially through these times, without those sponsors. So this morning we bring you another one of our online programs, our way to actually have a person-to-person connection, and it remains a little limited during this time, as we all know. So it's good today that we bring positive news. We'll hear from Senate President Bill Galvano. Bill and his family are longtime residents of the Bradenton area. Bill was elected to the Senate in 2012 and then re-elected subsequently, and serves the Senate District 21 in Manatee County and parts of Hillsborough County. Since 2018, he was unanimously elected as a Senate colleague by his colleagues to serve a 2-year term as a Senate President, making President Galvano the 88th President of the Florida Senate since statehood. Bill has held several leadership positions within the Senate, including serving as a term as a Senate Republican leader. And before that, he had held a House seat from 2002 to 2010, including a term as chair of the House Rules and Calendar Council. Bill was educated publicly and has earned an associate's degree from Manatee Community College, now SCF, as I am a board member there. Bill, thank you for your time and support for the college. And then went on to receive a bachelor's degree from the University of Florida and a Juris Doctorate from University of Miami School of Law. He's a partner with the Grimes, Hawkins, Gladfelder, and Galvano of Bradenton, and he and his wife Julie are proud parents of 3 children. Bill, I'm so glad you're here with us this morning. Thank you for being here, and I'll turn the program over to you now.
Well, thank you for having me. It's my pleasure to spend a little time with you all this morning, and life goes on. We are doing things a little differently nowadays, but things are moving forward and the picture's looking better and better. This session, well, let me go back to when I became the Senate President. I told my Senate colleagues, I said, our greatest challenge has yet to reveal itself. And I said that based on experience, because that I have had through the process, my days in the House when things came up that we didn't anticipate. For example, BP oil spill, other issues. A few years ago, we dealt with the horrific situation in Broward County at Parkland. And so, that's part of the process. But I could never have predicted that we would be dealing with the emergency state of affairs that we have been with COVID-19. And so this is a lot of new territory for us. We had gone through our session, very productive session. And frankly, let me tell you, I think the legislature has been the most productive House and Senate in the last 2 years than ever before in my experience. And there's a lot that accounts for that. I think one of the main keys is that the Speaker and myself and the Governor work together for the people of Florida. We're more interested in seeing results and accomplishing what is necessary as opposed to politicizing issues. And I have great respect and certainly support our Speaker of the House, Jose Oliva. And frankly, I think Governor Ron DeSantis is doing a phenomenal job, not just presently with COVID-19, but as governor in general, and it's a real pleasure to work with him. and that has yielded significant results in many, many areas, whether it's in education, whether it's in how we dealt with Visit Florida, the state worker compensation, dealing with people with disabilities, and a lot of different issues that have come across the board. But towards the end of session, the speaker and I were looking at the way things were developing with the coronavirus and the potential impacts to the economy. And so we actually spent some additional time in Tallahassee to see if we could build our reserves up. And we were able to do so by close to $400 million on top of what we had already in reserves. And remember, Florida has made sound fiscal decisions for decades now. Even when we had the recession, we came back in a special, we took made the difficult decisions, but just to make sure that we are solvent and that we are have reserves to address issues. And that's why our state, at the time, our unemployment was outpacing the rest of the nation. We enjoyed a AAA rating by all bonding rating companies and continued to see significant growth. But we knew there was something on the horizon with this issue. And so we increased our reserves. And now what that means is, coming out of session, we had in what we call general revenue reserves, roughly 1.7 to 1.8 billion dollars. We also have a budget stabilization fund that gets activated if our revenues fall, estimate revenues fall below a certain percentage, and it's literally there to stabilize the budget. And that's about $1.7 billion. And we have what are called lot and child's funds at around 800 million. So, you're over $4 billion in reserves going into the summer. And as you have seen, things took a rapid pace, both financially and from a health response standpoint. The federal government passed the CARES Act. The CARES Act provided to the state of Florida $12 billion. 3.7 billion of those dollars were direct spend into the state. For example, like a FEMA type spend, where you would have a cost incurred, and the secretary of DEM, Department of Emergency Management. By the way, Jared Moskowitz is doing a great job. He's been on the spot, and some of you may have followed in Manatee County. We needed some additional support, and I reached out to Jared. He's been just great the whole way, as has the governor. In fact, I was in Tallahassee this week and talking with the governor about Manatee County, and he brought it up because it's important. But anyway, so you have that 3.7 direct spend. Then there is about another 3.7 of which goes to local governments. A large portion of those dollars have already been distributed because the federal government said if you have a county or a city with 500,000 folks or more, then those funds get all automatically distributed. The balance of those funds, about roughly 1.2 billion, are being held in the state funds right now for ultimate distribution. And then there's 4.6 billion to the state, which was classified as budget stabilization. And the Treasury said these dollars are available to be used for cash flow issues related to the COVID-19 impact. So those funds currently are being held, and we're looking at where we are financially as we continue to move forward into this scenario. Our state economists are pretty much on a daily basis looking at the national models, IHS, Moody's, the Congressional Budget Office, monitoring how our revenues are being collected or not collected, as the case may be, and maintaining a big picture so as to have somewhat of an estimate as to the potential negative impact to the state coffers. And at this point, it's just north of $3 billion. And that number can change as time goes on. The modeling was initially done based on seeing some things reopen at the beginning of June, but as you know, we have started reopening here in the month of May. So the picture we have today, and again, these numbers can change. We have to stay on top of it, and they're going to become more clear towards the end of June, is you have about $5 billion in the bank from the federal government, then the reserves that I went through, with a potential impact of $3 billion, and probably will be more by the time we get there. What does that tell us? That tells us that we don't have to rush back in to before our fiscal year begins in July to address major budget issues. And that's a good thing. That's because we have been good stewards of the taxpayer dollars here in the state of Florida. The federal government is also talking about another relief package. Remember, this would be the third. You had a Medicaid Families First, and which yielded about $580 million into the state as well. I don't know what they're going to do with it. Frankly, I wish they wouldn't. At some point, you have to say enough is enough, and how much are we going to put on the backs of our children and our grandchildren? And we have to be fiscally responsible, like we have in the state of Florida. And I think we can deal with what we have and get through and make decisions accordingly. I don't tell them what to do in DC. I can only share my views. So we'll see what comes next. The House has hosted the budget conference this year, and that simply means that every other year one chamber hosts a budget or the other, which means that the speaker is holding the budget right now. And again, we work very closely with the governor, and they the governor will monitor and give an indication as to when he thinks is the appropriate time to send the budget over so that it can be addressed. Right now, with everything in flux, it is why he's waiting, because we really want to get a very clear picture before he makes a decision as to how to address the budget, what the number of vetoes are, what he cannot be sustained and what can be sustained. But our fiscal year starts July 1st, so we are just about a month and a half out from it having to go into effect. So then the question does come up about a special session, and do we necessarily need a special session? Well, again, we're watching the numbers as we get into June and towards the end of June, but it may also be necessary for us to come back at some point to reappropriate federal dollars. For example, if the guidance from Treasury is such that we have to use those dollars to fill expenditures that have taken place, we may very well have to come in and address those issues. We have what's called the Legislative Budget Commission that's made up of members from both chambers that will meet in September and has the ability to move or reappropriate dollars. But if it comes down to moving $5-6 billion, I don't think it's appropriate that be done by committee. That should be done by the legislature. So we're going to watch and see how we can use these dollars. If they come in and plug revenue losses, then that's going to make it a lot more simple. And that clarification has been sought from the federal government. In terms of where we have been in reopening, the governor has been very, very methodical and has paced the state of Florida at the correct pace, in my opinion. We didn't rush to a major shutdown like has occurred in other states, but we did have a series of executive orders that pulled back the activities here within the state. And what we were monitoring while those activities were pulled back was the availability of medical assets. For example, from hardware being ventilators and personal protection equipment, things of that nature, as well as the availability of beds. And, we were seeing models that predicted, in fact, they were calling Florida the next Italy and saying that, New York was Florida's future and things of that nature. So, there was a lot of information out there that required us to be very vigilant and take appropriate steps. And before reopening, there was a task force that the governor put together, and the speaker and myself were on that task force and the executive committee of that task force. And we made recommendations, but ultimately, when you get to these executive orders, it's his decisions. And so we had phase one that began just a little over a week ago. And important to note was there were no hard and fast dates set for anything once phase one started. And so it's not like you get to the 20th of May and this is happening. Everything's going to be based on where we see our numbers and the availability of medical assets, and the testing numbers and the case numbers continue to be very good in the state of Florida. And loss of any life is unacceptable, but given what was predicted and where we are and the growth that we see, we're doing well. So today, restaurants went to 50%, retail went to 50%. Gyms that are opening up last week, salons came back online, and you can expect to see a continued reopen as the weeks go on. Disney, Universal are both looking at opening their respective, I call it their shopping parks, Disney Springs and then City Walk at Universal, and people are taking the right steps. One of the issues that was important to me was to get vacation rentals back up, and the governor did include that last Thursday when he went through his executive order with the opportunity for counties to weigh in and to have a plan as they go forward. So that's really where we are. That's a state of the state, so to speak. We started this year with revenues significantly above where we had estimated, which means we collected more from just the economic activities. We were $202 million over what we had anticipated collections would be the first couple of months of this year. And that's great because it provided additional cushion. It's a shame because it shows that how strong we were going into the year. And in March, we had significant loss of revenues under what was anticipated in the hundreds of millions. Now, some of that is based on deferments that have taken place for corporate taxes, and those deferments are still within this fiscal year, so ultimately we'll capture those revenues. But the truth is, when you shut down an economy, it has impacts, and we're all feeling it. And it's time for us to be moving forward, and I'm glad to see that we are, and then bringing our businesses and our lives back online safely, of course. But we need to get that done, and I'm going to continue to advocate for that. So I know there are questions, and I'm happy to entertain those.
Dan, do you want to cover some of the questions we've received, or anybody that may have a question can add an additional question inside the chat box as well?
Yeah, Senator Dan Sidler with the Alliance. Thank you so much for taking the time to
absolutely.
A little update today. We took some questions in advance through registration. I'm just going to go here, and I would, like Don mentioned, I would encourage all the attendees to put questions.
Excuse me.
First, please address any anticipated impacts on education budgets for area K through 12 and colleges.
So we had fully funded our colleges and universities through our state budget. And as you recall, a few years ago, and it was actually Senate Bill 4, which I carried, we had stepped up our university funding, and we had significant increases to K-12, which was very important to me as Senate President. And this goes back to even last year. I wanted to see the base student allocation increased at a significant level that was a necessary level, and have that balance. We expanded the family empowerment scholarship too, to continue to have that balance of choice. So the BSA increase was the highest that it had been in about a decade. So we went into this session with a higher base level with education. And then we stepped that up significantly again. A large portion of that was based on the governor's desire to see across the board teacher raises, especially for starting new teachers. And so that which ended up being about $500 million going into the system came out and came through and is in our budget that will be sent to the governor. So from a state impact, without getting into the COVID side, our education funding was significantly higher than it has been in a while. With regard to COVID, the CARES Act provided additional dollars to K-12 specifically, and to colleges, and I'm talking about tens of millions to different institutions. For example, FAMU will get $30 million, FSU $13 million. A lot of it based on distributed based on financial needs of the student population. Pell Grant students. There's another $173 million that the Commissioner Richard Corcoran, who again is doing a good job. He served as Speaker at one point, that he will distribute to K-12 as well. There should be additional costs next year as some modifications are being made, but I know this isn't part of the question, but the idea is to get schools open in the fall and to start bringing some summer camps and programs on this summer. So just FYI in that regard. So there are dollars out there to address the needs of our universities and our K-12 system, but a lot has to reveal itself as time goes forward.
There is a chat. There has been support for counties with populations greater than 500,000. Will there be support for those with under 500,000, such as Sarasota Manatee?
Yes, and the answer is yes. And as you recall, when we were going through the CARES dollars, that's all part of that 3.7 that was distributed. The initial distribution went to, and it was federal formula, not a state formula, went to 12 counties and one city, I believe, the city being Jacksonville. We have dollars that we will distribute now that the state has, that we will distribute to the other counties, and we're working on parameters to do those so that they will have the greatest impact, positive impact, which includes, and I'm in having some conversations with the governor, how do we make sure we're also supporting our business community in these counties.
There's a question about climate change. Are there any legislation that is likely to be passed or initiatives that legislators are sponsoring?
Going into next session, I don't know who's filed what yet, but we did have some issues that were addressed this past session with regard to environmental issues that were designed to mitigate impacts of sea level rise and other climate related issues. But we approached them more as an environmental issue, and the idea was to maintain what we call coastal resilience. Whatever the cause, we want to make sure that we have our coastal resilience. And then in the budget, there were significant dollars for beach renourishment and addressing red tide and other things of that nature. $100 million for Florida Forever.
Senator, I know you're tight on time, and thank you again for making time for us today. There was a number of questions that just want to know what's next for Bill Galvano. What can we expect for you in the future?
Well, I anticipated a few months back at this point I would be speaking to you live, for example, and starting to transition. But I've been extremely busy dealing with the issues that we've just been discussing. My term ends in November. You know, I'm a partner in a law firm that will be 100 years old in a couple years. I am very passionate about the practice of law, and at this point, my goal is to come back and pick up that practice and get back in the courtroom.
Any other questions? I do see one here. Will there be any changes to VPK programs and funding?
Not that I'm aware of. As there's been nothing suggested, and you know, daycares have stayed open. We support VPK, and we're going to make sure that funds are available for it.
Okay, some of the nursing homes in Manatee County have become COVID-19 hotspots. What else can the state do to help slow the spread in nursing homes and keep those patients safe?
Yeah, and Manatee has unfortunately become a hotspot. But if you look at the numbers in Manatee, they're significantly better than they were just a few weeks ago. And you know, it took getting we brought the National Guard in. We established additional testing standards, and I met with Secretary Mayhew from the Agency for Healthcare Administration last, I guess it was Friday. We met and spent some time, and they are improving protocols for the nursing homes and for transition from nursing homes back to the hospitals. And you know, a lot of this is learning as you go, but at this point in Florida, the main issue is nursing homes, and Surgeon General, everybody's on top of it.
Great, we have time for one more question. Do you know when the governor will release the CARES Act money to school districts, and when the commissioner will release the $173 million to school districts?
So, no, I would anticipate, you know, over the next month and a half, given the fiscal year that we have, he's collecting information, getting feedback as to where those dollars are best utilized. The other dollars I think you're referring to is the local government impact dollars. You know, we're looking at the best way to address those, and again, that would, in my opinion, have to occur before the next fiscal year, which is July 1st.
Dan, I think we're gonna cut it with that last question. I wanted to, before Senate President Galvano needs to leave us, I'd like to give a virtual round of applause this morning. Thank you for attending with us this morning, Bill, and wish you and your family well.
Well, thank you.
The coming months come.
And
so
to all of you.
Yeah, thanks, Bill. Before you all leave, the members, please feel free to visit our community forum. It's still up on our website. That forum allows you to enter information that you may have, corporate specials, corporate hours, corporate offerings. So if you want to post something there, please feel free to let the other members know what you've seen. For the non-members that were here this morning, and there was many of you, as we've made all of our events free at this point, please consider joining. Caitlin Driscoll can handle registration for membership, and we're now offering a prorated membership for the remainder of the year. Upcoming on May 19th, Lunch with Ranchers. That's tomorrow. Limited opportunities still available. Thursday, May 28th, the YLA online happy hour. We'll be doing categories at 5 p.m. So if you're under 40 and would like to join that group, please do. And then Friday, May 29th, another Alliance lead similar to today, Your Vote, Your Voice. Our elected supervisors of elections, Sarasota County, Ron Turner, Manatee County, Mike Bennett, will discuss ensuring public safety at the polls, the vote by mail process, and what else to expect during this upcoming election year. Again, President Galvano, thank you, and to all, have a great day.